All right, today we are jumping to letter 61 here, and we're making some progress here. It's on meeting death cheerfully. Okay, and this is a fairly short one. Again, we've got some short ones. We had some really long ones. Now we've got some shorter ones here. And in this one, in verse 1, he says, "Let us cease to desire that which we have been desiring. I, at least, am doing this. In my old age, I have ceased to desire what I desired when a boy. To this single end, my days and my nights are past. This is my task, this the object of my thoughts, to put an end to my chronic ills. I am endeavoring to live every day as if it were a complete life. I do not indeed snatch it up as if it were my last. I do regard it, however, as if it might even be my last." So I think this is powerful here. Okay. He's saying here, starting off by saying, let us cease to desire that which we have been desiring. Okay. So this is true, right? We talked about this last week in the last letter about how, we have all these things that we desire. We need to stop desiring those things. Okay. It doesn't mean that we can't have good things in our life. Seneca was a rich man at some point, but it means that we need to stop chasing after these things and realize we don't need those things, okay? He says, "I at least am doing this in my old age. I've ceased to desire what I desired when a boy." So he's gotten to that point. It's kind of interesting. Also, I can't remember if I was reading this in a book, I think, or someone had commented this point. I think it was in a book. It was talking about how sort of when you reach 40, oh no, maybe it was a comment on one of my videos, and maybe it came from a book, but this idea that at the beginning part of your life, you up to 40 or so, you've got these ambitions, you've got these things, get a wife, get a job, get a, whatever it is. And then sort of life after 40 or 50 or so, there's really not an objective. There's not a complete goal to go after. And so you kind of have to figure that out, and it can be very different. And I thought, and I experienced that, and I've been going through that, and maybe that's something that Seneca realized too. Is it's like these things that I desired when I was younger, I don't really desire those things anymore, and I'm trying to change those things because I can't keep going after those things. Just like for me, for instance, when I was younger, I desired to get jacked, to make some money, to be good with women and all of these kind of things. And now it's like where I'm at now, it doesn't even make that much sense anymore. I'm 43 years old. Yeah, I have a pretty jacked physique. I can run some distances. I've done some things. I've made some money. I'm happily married now. But where it almost becomes a point of where am I going with these things? I'm not going to continue to build in these areas. This pursuit of becoming the man, it is done. And now I've set my mind to different things, right? And that's how it should be. Your mind should shift to different desires, right? He says, "To the single end, my days and my nights are past. This is my task. This is the object of my thought." So he's really trying to shift his thoughts, right? And this is interesting too. I'll make some side notes here. Maybe this will be more valuable to you as I'm making more commentary on these. Maybe this is how I used to do them. But what I'll say about this is that this is what this kind of can relate to, maybe it's useful to you, is the over-sexualization. Right? I know that's not exactly what he's talking about, but of society today, of men today, right? I know it's mostly men that are watching these. And you see Instagram, you see TikTok, you see all kinds of lewd things. If you go to the gym, you see yoga pants, and it's almost like you have to retrain your mind and not think about those things and not see those things to resensitize yourself, so that you're not desiring all of this stuff, this hypersexualization, which in many ways destroys you. It destroys your productivity, but it also destroys your relationships, especially your relationships with women. So this is something that you have to do. You have to really, and I've done this myself, and the results are so much better in life where you can just focus on things and you enjoy the things that you have. And by taking your mind off of desires and by refocusing them to what you actually have, you enjoy what you have more. And then, he goes on to say here that, to put an end to my chronic ills, I'm endeavoring to live every day as if it were a complete life. Now, this is really powerful too. Okay. Endeavoring to live every day as if it were a complete life. What does that mean, to live every day as if it were a complete life? Okay. Now, it means that in every day you are enjoying the things that you have. You're not looking so much towards the future. You're not putting things off. That could be you're doing the things that you're supposed to do today. You're living in the present moment, not in the future. Okay, not in the past. And you are, imagining that this is all that you have, but not to such a degree, right? As he says here, I do not indeed snatch it up as if it were my last. Okay, I do regard it, however, as it might even be my last. So what he's saying is that, like, the problem that a lot of people say, if they say, imagine that this is your last day. The thing is, if it were, you would act differently than if you were imagining that every day was a complete life. Let me tell you why. Is because if it were your last day, if you only had one day to live, what would you do? Well, you'd probably put your affairs in order. You'd probably tell all the people that you love them. Who knows? I mean, it would be kind of like you'd eat your last meal that you would enjoy. But you can't live every day like that. That would not be advisable. You do a lot of things that don't take any regard to the future. But if you're living your life every day as if it were a complete life, then you're going to do the wholesome things, the things that bring you actual joy and value and being in the present moment. And that's the difference. You're not going to just snatch it up because it's not that, right? So it's this practice of saying, every day, did I live my day in a way that I would be proud of? That if this were my last day and I didn't know it were my last day, and that's the thing, would I be proud of this day? Would I felt like I've done the things that I should have done this day? And if you can do that, then you've done well. All right, in verse 2, he says here, the present letter is written to you with this in mind, as if death were about to call me away in the very act of writing. Okay, so again, I'll break this down a little bit more as we're going. I'm thinking this style might be a little bit better. Okay, this is how I used to do things when I wasn't in such a rush, which maybe the last letter kicked some sense into me here. So he says in verse 2, the present letter is written to you with this in mind. So this letter is written with this in mind, okay, as if death were about to call me away in the very act of writing. Okay, so when he's writing this letter, he's thinking about, it's as if death were about to call me, okay? I am ready to depart, and I shall enjoy life just because I am not over anxious as to the future date of my departure, okay? So he's saying, I'm ready to depart, and the reason why I'm going to enjoy life is because I'm not over anxious as to the future date of my departure. I'm ready to go. My bags are packed. Okay. And so because I got some time to kill before the Uber arrives, I can just chill and play Mario Kart. Okay. I'm not super anxious about this. I know it's coming, but I'm ready to go because I did all the things I need to do. All right. Before I became old, I tried to live well. Okay. Now that I am old, I shall try to die well. But dying well means dying gladly. See to it that you never do anything unwillingly. So again, we look back. Before I became old, I tried to live well. So what does that mean? Right? He tried to perhaps get the things that he needed in life, and maybe some of these ambitions and things like that. Okay, and it is about living the good life, right? But now that I'm old, I'm going to try and die well. But what does that mean? He says, well, but dying well means dying gladly. Now that's a hard thing. Can you die gladly? I mean, I think that if you've lived your life as if every day were a complete life, then you could die gladly. Now, like when I think about it myself in my life, and there were some moments actually this week where I did consider that, where I was with my wife, we were having such a good time. We have such a great relationship, and our relationship has just gotten better and better, where we just love each other. We just love the company of each other. We treat each other so well. We don't argue. We don't say anything mean to each other. Not that we haven't ever in the past, argued, but and I was thinking in that moment, in some of those moments, I was like, I could die happy here. I could, I feel fulfilled and glad. Now, I also thought I don't want to, because I don't want to lose on this. I don't want to miss out any more of this. I want this to go on. But those few times I did think those things, and the things that made me think those things was that everything just felt, I didn't feel like I needed. In fact, that's what it was. It was, I didn't feel like I needed anything. I had it all here. And I felt the completeness of love. And that made me feel that I could die gladly, So it's an interesting thing. Okay. And he says, see that you never do anything unwillingly. This is just a powerful phrase in itself. See to it that you never do anything unwillingly. How much better would your life be if you adhered to that phrase? How many times do you do things that you don't want to do and you do them, right? Or, you feel forced into doing those things, or your heart's just not in it. It's something you want to do, but you don't actually want to do it. You're not willing, right? If you have to do a thing, do it willingly. Choose to do that thing, right? As I sat down to record the video today, which I'm recording a couple actually, it ended up becoming. At first, I was like, I just need to get this thing done, which is just the wrong way to look at it. And that's why I've slowed down a little bit and said, this is enjoyable. This is the thing. I willingly do this. I want to do this thing. So it makes a difference. It makes a difference in not only how you show up and what you do, but in how you feel about it. It feels good to do something willingly. Like we fight the things and then we just live through life, and it's not good. In verse 3, he says, that which is bound to be a necessity if you rebel is not a necessity if you desire it. Again, breaking this down. That which is bound to be a necessity if you rebel is not a necessity if you desire it. In the sense that if you're fighting against this thing, it's going to be hard. But if you just go with the flow, if you just go along with it, it'll be so much easier. He says, this is what I mean. He who takes his orders gladly escapes the bitterest part of slavery, doing what one does not want to do. So if you gladly take the orders that you have, like, the worst part of being a slave is that you're having to do what you don't want to do. Okay. So if you decide that whatever you have to do is what you do want to do, guess what? It's not slavery anymore. It doesn't matter. Right. And if you think that you're free, you're wrong. We're all slaves. We all have to do things that we don't want to do to a degree. Right. Some of it's just practical. You got a job. You got to listen to what the boss says. But if you're upset with the boss says and you don't want to do the job, then you've created slavery for yourself. You've actually created the real slavery, the bad part of it. Right. Essentially. But if you work your job and you're like, hey, whatever I need to do, I'm just going to do it. I want to do the thing. It becomes so much more pleasant. Just like like I said, I sat down to do these videos, and if I'm like, I got to do this video, which again, no one's really compelling me to do this, but in my mind, if I make it into slavery, it's not so fun. It's not so enjoyable. But when I sat down and said, I really enjoy doing this. This is something great. I want to do this. It becomes so much more fun. And you enjoy this, listening to this better, I'm sure, except maybe my rambling is a bit, but I like it, and that's what matters to me. All right. Doing what does not want to. Okay. The man who does something under orders is not unhappy. He is unhappy who does something against his will. Okay. So again, breaking that down. The man who does something under orders is not unhappy. It's not that someone's telling you what to do. It's that you're doing it against your will, that you haven't submitted your will to the thing. He says, let us therefore set our minds in order that we may desire what is demanded of us by circumstances, and above all, that we may reflect upon our end without sadness. So what he's saying here is he's kind of combined two things. All right. And there's a reason why he's combined these two things, which I'll tell you in a minute. Okay, so let us therefore set our minds in order that we may desire what is demanded of us by circumstances. So whatever it is that you've got to do, let's desire that thing. Let's go into that thing with the mindset that is what we want. Let's change our will, because we can. All right. And he says, and above all, that we may reflect upon our end without sadness. Now, why does he say this? He means that you should be thinking about death without sadness, because it is what is commanded of you. You will die. You must die. Okay. And so if you change your will and say, I am willing to die, I am ready to die, it is what I want to do, then it changes it from a form of slavery, or the worst part of slavery, to something that is good. And that's hard to do with death. But the way I think that you do that with death is to say that, look, I believe in the cycle of life. I believe in the order of things. And I want to have lived my life and to live it to completion. And it is a hard thing. It is a hard practice. And that is something that you work on your entire life, is to be ready for death, is what Seneca says. Verse 4, we must make ready for death before we make ready for life. Life is well enough furnished, but we are too greedy with regard to its furnishings. Something always seems to us lacking and will always seem lacking. Okay, so let's break that down a little bit here. So we got to make ready for death, okay, before we actually make ready for life. He says life is good enough already. It's already furnished. Right? We already have all the stuff we need for life. We don't need to make more ready for life. We're good. We got all the stuff we need. We got food to eat. We got shelter. We have basic needs. It's pretty much covered. You might not think it is, but it is. You don't need as much as what you think you do. Okay. And he says, but we're too greedy with regard to its furnishings. Okay. It always seems like something is lacking, and will always seem lacking. And that's the key part, is that it will always seem lacking. You know, as successful as I've become, it's weird. I'm like, how did I get in the situation where I feel scarcity again? You know what I mean? Being a multi-millionaire, you know, having like all the stuff that I have, and it's like, because it always seems lacking. It always does, and no matter where you get to, you know. And he says here, to have lived long enough depends neither upon our years nor upon our days, but upon our minds. That's interesting. It's not how long you live. It's not the days that you have. It's your mind. Okay. So what does he mean by that? And let's see if I have lived, my dear friend, listen to this, long enough. I have had my fill. I await death. Farewell. Okay. So he's talking about his where he's at, and he is resolute in this, and we see that he is true in what he's saying, in the sense that Seneca died by order of the emperor to commit suicide, which he did. He slit his wrists in a bathtub and waited it out. And he did not resist or fight that, and he could have gotten away from that order, just like Socrates could have, as well, when he drank the lilac. But he says here, I have lived, my dear friend Lucius, long enough. I've had my fill. I await death. So that is the true words of a Stoic. So, and I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about breaking things down to this level of degree. I think this is how I used to do things when I first started on the series, and I think this is a more beneficial way to expound upon this rather than just reading the text here. But curious to get your thoughts on this. See you next time.